Hey everybody. So yesterday afternoon, news broke that I really didn't think we were ever going to see, and that is that the Edmonton Oilers had traded Milan Lucic. They had finally gotten rid of that horrendous contract for Lucic, and as the details started to emerge, we realized what this deal really was. And this was trading bad contract for bad contract. So Milan Lucic has been traded to the Calgary Flames in exchange for James Neal. And there's a conditional third-round pick involved and retained salary on Edmonton's part. But basically how it works out is James Neal goes to Edmonton and Milan Lucic goes to Calgary. Now, Edmonton will also give Calgary that conditional third-round pick if James Neal scores more than 21 goals next season. I believe these are the conditions. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I did read that these were the conditions. James Neal has to score 21 or more goals next season and have 10 more goals on the year more than Milan Lucic. If Neal does that, then Calgary will also get that third-round pick from Edmonton. But that would require James Neal having a much, much better year next year than he did this past season, where he was a huge disappointment in Calgary. Now, when you look at it, this really is bad contract for bad contract. You have Milan Lucic, who is making $6 million a year for 4 more seasons on his current deal. Absolutely probably one of the worst contracts in the league. Now Edmonton did retain salary $750,000, so as a cap hit, Lucic only counts as 5.25 against the cap for Calgary, but he is making $6 million a year. James Neal is making $5.75 million per year. His full salary goes to Edmonton, so actually, the way it works out is that Edmonton doesn't really get cap space out of this because they had to retain on Lucic's and now have to pay the full cap hit for Neal. But Calgary does get some cap space out of this. But I think it's pretty safe to say that Edmonton gets the player with the higher upside. Neal also has 4 years left on his current deal. He does not have a no-movement clause, however, Lucic does. So Lucic had to, A, approve this move, and he will have to approve any move going forward if the Flames look to get rid of him, because he has a full no-movement clause for this coming season and the year after, and then a no-movement clause and a modified no-trade clause for his final 2 seasons of that contract. So, to me, I'm surprised Edmonton was able to move this contract, because this Lucic's contract really was one of, if not the worst in the NHL. And I really never thought that Edmonton would be able to get rid of it. However, they have, much to my surprise. And to be honest with you, I really don't see the value here in this trade at all for Calgary. This, to me, makes no sense for the Calgary Flames. Calgary was a Pacific Division winning team last year, a first-place team last year, a playoff team last year, and now they go, and yes, James Neal was a massive disappointment, but they still were a good team without him, and now they go and bring in Milan Lucic, who is Lucic is done as being an effective player at the NHL level. He can't skate, he can't move. He brings you nothing offensively anymore. He's a big, slow body that he is not a valuable player at the NHL level anymore, and I think he's proven that the last 2 seasons in Edmonton. He's a shell of his former self at only 31 years old, and it's a shame, but I don't see what Calgary gets out of this. Because, yes, James Neal was awful last year. Absolutely awful. But James Neal has a much higher upside than Lucic does. Lucic, I think, is completely done. He might score 5 or 6 goals next year and maybe have 15 points. But he is done. And he is certainly not a $6 million a year player. James Neal, Does James Neal go out and have another lousy season and maybe only score 7 or 8 goals? Sure. But James Neal could become a 20-goal scorer again. James Neal is still a talented player. James Neal's still a guy that I think you could put him in a middle of the lineup, second or third line winger role and get 15 to 20 goals out of him, and he could end up having a much better season this next year than he did last year. Yes, last year was very, very bad for him, but his upside is still so much greater than where Milan Lucic's upside is at this point. I don't understand this deal at all from a Calgary perspective. I have no idea why they would do it, other than they do because of the retained salary. They get about $500K in extra cap space available. I don't know what they're going to do with an extra $500,000. That's really not that much. But it just, for Edmonton, this is a no-brainer. You get a guy who's coming off a career worst season, but still has some upside, and you get rid of the worst contract on your team, one of the worst contracts in all of hockey. You move on from that, and at most you give up that and maybe a third-round pick if the conditions work out. But this was a no-brainer from the Oilers' standpoint, and for Calgary, this just doesn't make much sense to me. I don't know what Calgary thinks they're going to get out of Milan Lucic that Edmonton didn't get out of him the past 2 seasons. Maybe I'm wrong, and Lucic goes back and has a 20-goal season and 40 points and 100 penalty minutes and looks like the Milan Lucic from 4 years ago. But I just don't see that happening. I think Lucic is done. I can't believe Edmonton found a trade partner for that contract, and good on them for getting rid of him when they could. And they get James Neal too, who I at least see some potential still there with James Neal. So there's my thoughts on that trade. I'm shocked that it happened. I'm shocked anybody took on Lucic's contract, and good on Edmonton for getting rid of him, and for Calgary, this just does not make much sense to me. But with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Please keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. We're on our road to 1,000 subscribers, so if you can help get us there, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.